Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Kramer versus Kramer, starring Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep, Jane Alexander, and Justin Henry, directed by Robert Benton. Now, I've never seen this movie before I get into it, and also I heard this is a good movie and a classic, and that's part of why I put it in here because it won 5 Oscars. And let's see if they're worth it. Let's get into the movie. Joanna Kramer, played by Meryl Streep, thinks hard about getting a divorce from her workaholic husband, Ted, played by Dustin Hoffman, and she packs up and leaves their son Billy, played by Justin Henry, as Ted comes home to Joanna saying to Ted she's leaving him while he got a promotion at his job. And what a terrible thing Joanna is doing to Ted as he gets the promotion to leaving their son as a single father and takes $2,000 from their savings account. And despite I like Meryl Streep as an actress, and she does turn in some great work here, but her character is absolutely selfish, and I root for Ted more than her when I get to the courtroom scene at the end of the movie. And I'll get there when I get there. But I like the characters of Ted and Billy more than Joanna at this point in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Ted asks for help from his neighbor Margaret Phelps, played by Jane Alexander, and he brings up how she and her husband Charlie split up before the movie started. And the next day comes, and Billy and Ted get up, and Ted makes French toast and eggs for breakfast, and Billy keeps asking when is Joanna coming back, aka his mother, while he burns his hand and is upset because Joanna left him in the first place, as he messes up pretty badly as a parent. And when I first watched this for the review, I was thinking he's a terrible single father, but I had to keep in mind his wife just left him, so I'll give him credit for trying. And the acting by Dustin Hoffman is very good in this movie, as this might be one of his best performances in my opinion. Now confessionably, I've never seen The Graduate, which I'll get there one day. Ted goes to work and tells his boss, Jim O'Connor, he'll work 8 days a week and 25 hours a day, which doesn't make any sense to me, while he's struggling at the single father business, for example, telling Billy not to drink juice in the living room and get some things wrong at the grocery store. And Ted reads a note for Billy and Joanna, and he's heartbroken when she leaves her child. And I felt heartbreak from Billy. And this movie is well acted and well made. And there's a good reason it won 5 Academy Awards to begin with, and I'm going there instead of Oscars. Ted learns Billy has an upsetting episode about because he's 20 minutes late, Ted, I mean, and has an upsetting dinner episode as he wants to be excused from the dinner table. And I really like the writing in the movie, as it could have happened to any kid in this world. While any parents could get a divorce, of hundreds of kids have went through it. Even I went through it as a teenager, but I won't explain what happened because I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about this movie, and the script is smartly written and realistic. Ted and Billy wake up for the day and use the restroom as Billy works on setting up the table while they join together for breakfast, and Margaret, Ted, and Billy go to the park together and they talk about her ex-husband Charlie seeing a divorced woman while Ted gets yelled at by Jim for missing the opening meeting as he's getting very nervous, and Ted has a little dinner trouble with Billy as he doesn't eat his dinner, Salisbury steak, but instead eats ice cream, and he takes him to his room, and Billy has an episode where he says he hates him. And this movie is smartly written and told like I just brought up, and directed, and there were times I felt so bad for Ted and Billy, and that is a great filmmaking at its finest. Billy forgives Ted by the time he goes to bed and says he loves Ted, and Ted loves Billy. And I really like how they redeem each other as father and son, and the scene was pretty sweet, and it's acted very well by Dustin Hoffman and Justin Henry. Ted has dinner with Phyllis Bernard, they sleep together, and as she goes to the restroom and Billy sees Phyllis naked, and there was a little naked spot, I won't say, as we see from Phyllis, and I was surprised it got away with the PG rating. As remember, PG-13 didn't exist yet when this movie was made in the late 70s. And this scene is terribly awkward. Ted and Margaret talk at the park while Billy is at the park, and he climbs the highest monkey bar. I remember those. And falls and hurts himself and goes to the ER, emergency room, to get his face fixed by giving him 10 stitches. Ooh, that disturbs me to death. As it does to Billy and Ted, and Margaret holding him still, and Ted trusts Margaret to keep an eye on Billy as a big favor. And this happens in life, and I like the acting in this scene, and it works for life reasons. Ted gets a call from Joanna and meets her for lunch, and she tells him she watches Billy from a coffee shop across the street from his school, and says she had herself a job in California, and she came back to New York for 2 months, and says she wants to take care of Billy, and he gets upset about it, and he gets a lawyer to have custody over Billy, while she left him for 15 months. And this is a powerful scene, and it's powerfully acted by Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep. While he might not have custody of his son, or she might not have custody of his son for long, which is very heartbreaking. While Jim takes Ted to lunch to fire him on the spot, and Ted is upset, and he struggles in life and getting a new job so he can pay for his lawyer. And I really like how full of life this movie is. Ted tells his lawyer, John Shaughnessy, he got fired, or Shaughnessy, excuse me, he got fired, and he looks for a new job in 24 hours. While it's Christmas time, which seems impossible, and the day is Friday before Christmas, which happens to be the 22nd, and he begs to have a job very much and wants to see the big boss at this company he wants to get hired from on that very day. And he does land on one job that very day. That's not how job interviews work in general, which didn't make much sense, but to be fair, he felt desperate. And I felt it through the performance of Dustin Hoffman. Ted takes Billy to his first day of work, and Billy is impressed with Ted's new job, and he brings Billy to school and sees Joanna is spying on Ted and Billy, and he gets a call from John while he reads Billy a bedtime story, and John says she wants to see Billy for the day, and I did like the way it was shot in New York City. Ted and Joanna come in with their lawyers in the courtroom, beginning with Joanna going to the oath table, as she tells she was getting more and more unhappy and explains why she left him in the first place, as well as she was a terrible mother. And she's ready now, and based on how she said those lines, Joanna comes off rather unlikable, as she says she stalks Billy and wants to keep him away from Ted. While she admitted she wasn't a good mother, I believed it from that moment, and she had no reason to be a mother in the first place. Joanna tears up because she's afraid of losing custody of her child, and the case continues with Margaret testifying with Joanna's lawyers, keeps constantly interrupting, and same with the judge, as she says things are not the same, and also says Ted is not a bad man nor father. And Ted testifies, and he brings up how she doesn't listen and how much Billy has a home with Ted, and it's a great speech, and it's great acting by Dustin Hoffman, like I keep saying again and again. Joanna's lawyer pushes Ted by bringing up his job and constantly asking terrible questions. And at one point, he asks about how there's not a yes or no answer, and he expects a yes or no, while Ted's lawyer is kind of a jerk. Well, I should say Joanna's lawyer comes off kind of like a jerk in this whole courtroom scene. Joanna talks with Ted before he goes in the elevator, as she tries to apologize to Ted, and he doesn't want to hear it. And we move on to Ted talking with Margaret, getting back together with Charlie, and he meets up with his lawyer, John, as he says Joanna gets to keep Billy into her custody, which is very messed up. And I get the impression Joanna is very greedy about money versus taking custody of their kid, effective Monday. While Margaret tries to check up on Ted, and he doesn't open the door, and Billy goes with Joanna while he's sad he won't see his father so much, despite he took so much care of him for 2 years while Joanna was gone. And they go back to Ted's place and make some breakfast for the last time, and Joanna comes by the place, and she decides he is home with Ted, and she won't take him with her, and it ends up like that. And the climax was good, and it's filled with heartbreak, and at the end of the day, it's kind of a tearjerker, as I recommend couples with kids watch this film, and you'll see why this is a great an inspiring movie with the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.0 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, this movie is well made and the performances are great from Dustin Hoffman, as this may be one of his best performances in his career, despite I've never seen The Graduate yet. I'll get there one day. And Meryl Streep turns in great work, but I didn't like her character because she's constantly taking money versus custody of Billy at the end of the movie, and as I've felt heartbreak for Billy from start to finish. And I felt so bad for him, as this movie is smartly written and it's well directed and the story is well told. This is great filmmaking at its finest. I do enjoy this movie very much, as this could happen to any parent or kid in life, and I really do like how full of life this movie is, and at the same time, it's pretty heartbreaking from start to finish, but it did have a good ending, kind of. As Billy can see both his mother and his father, there's a good reason this movie won 5 Academy Awards, and this is considered a classic for a reason as well. And at the end of the day, I really did like the movie, and this is a solid recommendation. If anybody is going through a divorce with young kids, watch this movie, and you'll see what makes this a great and inspiring movie. Not that I'm an expert by any means. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Starman, John Carpenter. And until then, we shall go to court.